Joining us now to discuss these anti-Semitic attacks, Jeff Katz is the host of the Jeff Katz Show, and Rabbi Steven Burg is the CEO of Aish Global. Good morning, gents.
Morning. Morning.
So my heart, as well as your hearts, as well as many people all over the world, their hearts are still hanging very heavy, given what we saw in terms of the video and the violence that is taking place against the Jewish people in so many areas throughout the world. Now, when you hear Pope Leo and European leaders so clearly condemning the Sydney attack and anti-Semitism in general, what concrete actions do you want to see from faith and political leaders right here in the U.S.? Let's start with you, Rabbi.
Well, thank you very much for your condolences, and certainly the condolences are warranted given everything that happened. But to be frank and honest, it falls a little empty. We've watched 2.5 years of the demonization of Israel, demonization of the Jewish people. We have a mayor-elect now in New York City who does not accept the state of Israel as a Jewish state. So, and you know, you saw in the past crowds in Sydney yell "gas the Jews," and the prime minister, they begged him to do something about the anti-Semitism. So here, finally, this is what happens. Eventually, it comes out and people are murdered. So on the one hand, we're thankful that people are saying the right things now. On the other hand, they should have been saying that the entire way through. And I think whenever you demonize the Jewish people in Israel, this is going to be the result. And frankly, for 2.5 years, we've watched this hate, and here we are. So it's just hard to take it as seriously as one ought to, perhaps.
Yeah, and Rabbi, you led me into my next question. I mean, speaking of New York City Mayor Eric Adams, he weighed in on the Sydney attacks, zeroing in on the role of political leaders. Let's watch.
Have you heard the Sydney government, have you heard them talk about anti-Semitism in this attack? Have you heard them since October 7th, 100,000 Jews in that country? Have you heard them stand firm? No, you haven't. And that's troubling. And if the leadership of a country or a city is not willing to point out when a particular group of people in their country or city are being harassed, harmed, threatened, standing in front of a synagogue, calling for globalized intifada, if we're not willing to stand up as the leader of the city and say this is wrong and It's not going to happen, that is what's troubling.
Yeah, Jeff, I mean, unfortunately, he's on his way out. But when you hear Mayor Adams call out Australian officials for not clearly labeling this as anti-Semitism, how much damage does that kind of hesitation do in practical terms for Jewish communities around the world?
I think it does incredible damage, Krisha. And let me just correct the rabbi on one thing. He's talking about what's happened in the last 2.5 years. I would talk about what's happened in the last 4,000 years. We've heard this before. We've seen it before. The world seems to love dead Jews. They've got a problem when those of us who are Jewish stand up and fight back. I've often talked about how we need more of the attitude of JDL than ADL. Prime Minister Albanese in Australia is one of the giant hypocrites in all of this. He's somebody who stood with Hamas. He made it very, very clear he was standing with Hamas and against the Jewish state. And recently now he's wringing his hands over what happened in Bondi Beach. I agree with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Prime Minister Albanese has blood on his hands. And every time that you empower, embolden, cover for, support any of these Jew-hating groups, any of these terrorist organizations, you're simply giving aid and comfort to them. And this is the natural outgrowth. We're going to miss Eric Adams. And quite frankly, I'm very, very concerned about the incoming mayor up there in New York City. Very concerned.
Yeah, as we all should be. And what you pointed to, Jeff, with regard to the Sydney attack, the terrorist attack, 5 minutes and 52 seconds. That's how long both gunmen actually they were able to get off 103 gunshots.
Yep.
Why? Because the lack of leadership. They knew that event was taking place, but they didn't even have the right protocols in place for safety. 5 minutes and 52 seconds, far too long. But let's now listen to the Australian leadership's response in the days following the attack.
If we had our time again, of course we would do things differently. And part of our response with the Jewish community and the people of New South Wales through Operation Shelter working closely with the CSG, who are responsible for security in the Jewish community, is to ensure that we can work with them in the future. I can't take back Sunday, nobody can. But what we can do is ensure that in the future we are putting security in place so that we rebuild trust with the Jewish community.
I don't want to be judgmental here, but that was Chris Mims, the New South Wales Premier, giving an update on the horrific Bondi Beach shooting in Sydney, Australia, that left 16 people dead, including one gunman, and dozens more injured. Rabbi, that was, to me, that was empty words. It wasn't even heartfelt. It fell way short, far too late. What's your reaction?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, literally, especially Australia, the last 2.5 years, everyone's been talking to the government, trying to get them to step up, including the Chabad that was attacked. Look, I'm concerned now about New York, and I'll be honest with you. You mentioned Mayor Adams, who was an incredible friend of the Jewish people, is leaving, and Mayor Mamdani is going to come in. You're going to have an attack like this, and he's going to blame it on gun control instead of protecting the Jews. And we're seeing this throughout the world. You're seeing just in Syria, there was someone that killed American soldiers in the name of ISIS. You're seeing these guys did this in the name of ISIS. You have a new Syrian prime minister who is a former ISIS person. The Muslim Brotherhood is throughout the world, and they're going to continue attacking Jews. And the condemnations are too little too late. You have to keep the Jews safe, and you have to speak out, and you have to stop terror in any way that you can. And I totally agree with you. I think we find what's going on in Australia now from the government to be incredibly insincere.
Well, the politicization of religion and anti-Semitism, it continues to play out after this weekend's horrific events on the eve of Hanukkah. Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville, he posted this on X saying Islam is not a religion, it's a cult. Islamists aren't here to assimilate, they're here to conquer. Stop worrying about offending the pearl clutchers. We've got to send them home now or we'll become the United Caliphate of America. To which Senator Chuck Schumer, he responded saying the following: an outrageous, disgusting display of Islamophobia from Senator Tuberville. The answer to despicable anti-Semitism is not despicable Islamophobia. This type of rhetoric is beneath a United States senator or any good citizen for that matter. Jeff, when you see this kind of rhetoric from leading politicians, what should Americans take away from this exchange, and how can we talk about faith and hate in this country?
I think an honest discussion when it comes to faith is essential. I'm not looking to demonize one faith over another. I don't know about Chuck Schumer. I mean, here's somebody who, again, was seemingly willing to stand more with the most radical elements within his own party and against Israel. So I don't take a lot from him. I find this politicization just falling into the usual talking points for the left-wing parties anyway. In Australia, the response, of course, is not, geez, we failed because we were standing with Hamas. The response is, we already have the most extreme anti-gun laws in the world. Let's make them more extreme. It doesn't make any sense. It is an easy out for them, and it just involves their usual talking points. I think leaders of faith have to stand up, and they do have to talk to each other. And there does have to be a real degree of respect, but not talking about the extremist Islamists. I don't think anybody wants them involved in anything.
You know, Rabbi, I condemn both of the senators' comments. Why? Because as Jeff said, you don't demonize a whole class of people. You don't put everybody in the same basket, because that actually leads down the road of possibly others attacking people who are Muslims. So therefore, it may actually start a vicious cycle. What we need to do is focus on those who hate and those who actually engage in harmful verbal rhetoric and physical action. That's what needs to be done. What say you?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think there is a difference between terrorists and freedom fighters. And I think the issue here is I employ and work with Muslims. You know, we have Arabs that work for us at my institution, and they're great guys, and we get along very, very well. But the Muslim Brotherhood is out there, and they are trying to cause chaos. And you cannot idolize these people. They kill men, women, and children. Everyone across the globe has to speak out against them. And then we all have to come together, regardless of religion, race, or creed.
Exactly. And let's not forget that there was one unarmed Muslim man who stepped forward, risked his life to stop another Islamic extremist.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why you don't condemn an entire group of people associated with the religion. You single out those who engage in violence and violent rhetoric. Thank you so much, Jeff and Rabbi Katz.
Thank you. God bless, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.